Nigerian military and the Nigerian police for what they are and what they represent. I knew they were capable of, even if I didn't see any shred of evidence. Because we spoke with people who were on the scene, we saw videos, we saw.
In 2020, the EndSars protests happened, and the National Executive Council mandated the governors to set up panels of inquiry into the circumstances around the EndSars protests. Particularly, Lagos State set up a panel to probe the killings in Lekki, at the toll gates, and several other things. Now, the panel of inquiry has brought out far-reaching recommendations. On the show today on Akweya TV, we want to find out, is it likely that these panel recommendations will be implemented? And we'll be talking to a civil society activist who has really followed up and made sure all the panels did the right thing. There were some of those that pushed for ensuring that the panels were even set up in the first place. So we'll be talking with a very important personality. And if you stay tuned, in a short while, I'm going to bring back this Lagos-based personality, and you will know who he is in a short while. I am Odo Diego Kenyodo, and I'm the host for this show on Akweya TV, where we deal with history, culture, art, and development. Stay tuned.
At Akweya TV, we serve you with premium content on arts, culture, education, development, politics, entertainment, and lots more. Whichever perspective of our social lives as people may interest you, Akweya TV has got you covered. You can view our programs daily on our social media handles at Akweya TV, and don't forget on our YouTube that you will subscribe to our YouTube channel below. Thank you.
The person I'm having on the show today is the Executive Director of the Rule of Law and Accountability Center, Mr. Okechukwu Nwanguma. Okechukwu Nwanguma is a known name who has been fighting for reform of the criminal justice sector, particularly the police reforms. And he's an activist whose hands are always on the plow, ensuring that we are getting justice for those whose rights have been violated by the police and other policing structures within the country. I'd like to welcome Mr. Nwanguma to the show. So, Mr. Nwanguma, how do you feel about the EndSars report and how it was written? Do you feel a sense of vindication that all the position you've been pushing has, been taken by the government?
Well, I welcome the report of the EndSars with great delight. Great delight, reassurance, and restored hope. Reassurance that we still have in Nigeria, men and women who could stand up boldly and courageously for truth and justice. The Lagos State panel, virtually all the states set up panels, Yes. I think that the Lagos State panel stands out in terms of the seriousness with which they embarked on that assignment, in terms of the depth and thoroughness of the investigation, in terms of the detail of the report and the far-reaching recommendations that it has made. And it would be fair to also commend the Lagos State government and governor in particular for giving them all the support, the resources, and for not interfering in the work of panel. I think just like you said, it's not just RULAAC that this panel and the report vindicates. It vindicates the young people and all the people who stood up courageously, fearlessly, but peacefully against police brutality, police violence, and against injustice. For those who lost their lives, our youth are the heroes of this struggle. And for those who lost their lives, I think they must be acknowledged as martyrs of the struggle against police brutality and against bad governance. So I only hope that when the white paper is out, it will, highlight the important recommendations, and the government will this time, and I say so because the experience is that usually, panels, committees do great work, come out with good recommendations, but when it comes to implementation, nothing happens. I hope that this doesn't happen again. This is an opportunity for government to demonstrate its commitment to address, especially the type that happened at LekkiTollgate.
The panel made a lot of far-reaching recommendations, and this is a state panel, but it's recommending some things for dismissal of federal officials like personnel of the police, personnel of the Nigerian Army. Do you have any fear that these recommendations will not be implemented?
Well, every now and then, the problem with the type of federalism that we operate keeps manifesting. And I think that I suspect that's the question you're asking, because you find a situation where the police, the military are federal agencies, at the beck and call of the federal authorities. And so when state agencies make such recommendations, unless the federal government embraces or adopts such report and recommendation, you're not likely going to see anything happen. But it's not, the recommendations in these reports are not far from, they're not different from recommendations in previous reports on police reform, on criminal justice reform. And just as Nigeria is a signatory to a number of international treaties, which are not enforceable, but have moral force, I do expect that the federal government will see this as also another clarion call to address the inadequacies in our criminal justice system. So, although the panel is a state panel, but the recommendations it has made, stretch across states to federal, federal institutions. But I do hope that federal government will see this if it is genuinely committed. It doesn't matter from where recommendations are coming. The important thing is the genuineness of those recommendations. And I do expect that federal government will exercise good faith and demonstrate commitment to addressing impunity.
Okay.
If there is an implementation, how do you think this implementation would happen? In what form would it take? Is it that they will assemble the feedback from all the state panels, or how is this going to happen?
Well, you know how the panels came about in the first place. It was after in the heat of the EndSars protest. There was a meeting by the Federal Economic Council or something, the one that is chaired by the vice president. Is it that's what it's called, right?
Yeah, the National Executive Council. I think that's the name.
So that was where the resolution was taken, and the governors were mandated, or rather, the FEC agreed with the governors on the need for each of the states to set up judicial panel of inquiry. And of course, virtually all the states did set up one. What matters then is to what extent, how serious. There are some of the states where, even though they inaugurated these panels, but they didn't make resources available. They were not really serious about it. It was just a political statement they made, There are states where the members of the panel complained that they never got any allowance, they never got any resources to do anything. And that is why I said in my opening comment that Lagos State stands out. So the agreement is that all the states will send their reports and recommendations to the federal government through the federal executive, the federal economic FEC. I can't remember exactly what that FEC stands for. I think it's Federal Economic Council or something. I know that a number of states have already sent their own, state reports, and so I expect that Lagos will also do so. So what would then happen is that the federal government will harmonize these reports, and then I don't know whether they will. Well, implementation will lie with them, but I know that the reports are being sent to the body headed by the vice president, which in the first place reached the understanding with the governors to set up this panel.
What were the dynamics? Why do you think Lagos acted with so much seriousness on this, given the fact that Lagos was the same state that the governor initially tried to cover up the killings at the toll gate with different denials and doctored evidences? Why do you think Lagos acted with so much dispatch?
Well, Lagos State has always been a trailblazer in many things, including criminal justice administration reform. You will note that Lagos was the first to review its coroner law. Lagos was the first to come up with the administration of criminal justice law, which was actually the precursor to the federal AGJA, the act at the federal level. In fact, the federal AGJA adapted the Lagos state law, and other states that also, came up with justice law also adapted the Lagos version. So Lagos has always been a trailblazer, even in terms of reform of the judicial system, reforms, generally. I guess that is because of the nature of Lagos, the level of, I think it's a southwestern, it has to do with the level of enlightenment, the level of activist tendency that we find in this part of the country. So I think that perhaps more explains that, because I mean, nobody would have expected that the Lagos State governor who set up the panel was himself a subject of investigation, and yet, he allowed the panel to. So it's, and he has promised that in 2 weeks' time, the committee he set up, the white paper committee, will come up with a white paper. So I guess while submitting this report to the federal authorities, they also want to address some aspects of the report that, concerns Lagos State.
Lagos also recommended that the site should be turned into a memorial site, the LekkiTollgate. How do you feel about that recommendation as someone who has been recommending that there shouldn't only be punitive measures for law enforcement officials, but that there should be some kind of commemoration of victims?
Well, the EndSars protest and the events that happened at LekkiTollgate was, for me, a significant landmark in the struggle against police violence in Nigeria. And so it was a momentous occasion that we cannot forget. People sacrificed their lives to bring about, a responsible police and a justice system that serves public interest. So we cannot allow the memories of those, the martyrs of that struggle, to disappear. So it becomes important. Of course, I've had people say that the LekkiTollgate should be demolished. Well, for me, it's neither here nor there. Even if it is demolished, it does not take away the fact that something happened in that scene. So I agree with the Lagos State government that need to erect a monument and inscribe the names of those who either died or were injured in that attack, so that every October 20th, we will always remember. And for me, it becomes a reminder to the federal government on the need to show more commitment to police reform and to stamp out impunity in Nigeria. So it is important that this happens.
From the recommendations of this panel, do you see the government stopping this practice of denying that massacres took place, where we see security agencies killing and taking away bodies to cover up evidence? Do you see this practice stopping?
Well, this is not the first panel report that will come up with such far-reaching recommendations. But just like I said, I always like to keep hope alive, hoping that this will, this is an opportunity. The government will see this as an opportunity to begin to, seriously address recommendations by panels set up by government. And like I said, because we didn't see the dead bodies of those killed in that event that the panel has now confirmed to be a massacre. A lot of people said nobody was killed. And our point then, the RULAAC's point then is that if that is the only basis to deny that something happened, then it is a wrong basis, because historically, government and security agencies always have this tendency to clean up evidence. And we have seen in the past, in dealing with groups like BASOB or IPOB or even the sites in Kaduna State, when the military have committed mass atrocities, when they have killed people, what they do is to seize the dead bodies. In the case of Anambra, there was a particular occasion when they went to hospitals, searched through all the hospitals in Anambra State, and removed all the people who were being treated for gunshot injuries. And it was reported, just like the Kaduna State panel of inquiry revealed, that site members were buried, some of them alive, in mass graves. Some of these people who were in hospital receiving treatment for injuries were buried among the dead in secret, mass graves, which were later unveiled. So this is a tendency to cover up evidence, and then they come out and deny that nobody was killed. So this was just an enactment of that practice. And I hope that government will take seriously these recommendations if it really, really commits to addressing impunity. And I keep saying that because at the root of this thing is impunity for human rights violation. Government needs to demonstrate that it is genuinely committed, not just rhetorical commitments. And it's a shame that government continues to deny these things. Even when I hear, Amnesty comes out and says people were killed, CNN comes out and says, our government says they are talking bad on us. But government has no contrary evidence to show,
In the past 1 year, were you at any point feeling discouraged or beginning to doubt yourself, in this struggle, you and all the activists, there were no evidences? Were you beginning to doubt that you could be wrong or that these things didn't really happen?
Well, I never really, knowing the Nigerian military and the Nigerian police for what they are and what they represent, I knew they were capable of, even if I didn't see any shred of evidence. And of course, we saw it because we spoke with people who were on the scene. We saw videos, we saw reports, trying to validate the claims. But even if there was no shred of evidence, I could not. I know that the Nigerian security forces are capable of doing anything. So I was never really in doubt, because in the first place, even before that attack was a culmination of series of actions taken by government to discredit that protest and to make it seem by attempts to infiltrate them, attempts to sponsor so-called hoodlums, to derail the cause of that protest. So from the start, we saw evidence of government trying to discredit the protest. So I knew that anything could have happened. And we know that something happened. I was never really in doubt.
The panel of inquiry also recommended that some individuals and institutions should be commended, the hospitals and all of that. How do you feel about this? Is that a good way to go?
I mean, that was a very good recommendation by the panel. I mean, there were those who played very noble roles, like hospitals who took in and rendered medical service, gave treatment to some of the injured and wounded, victims of that attack, free of charge, and I think that it's worth recommending. I mean, in a climb where some hospitals, some medical personnel will say, oh, if you have a gunshot injury, you have to first go get a police report. But here, hospitals and medical personnel who decided to, decisively intervene to treat these people and save lives. So for me, it calls for recommendations and for award. And I think that they should be, rewarded for that good work, if only to show it as a way to go for every other, medical practitioner. Just as we call for sanctions for those who have done wrong, we should also call for commendation for those who have done the right thing.
And what's your view about the relief packages that are being recommended for the victims and their families? Do you think it will be implemented? Do you think something will be done about it?
Yeah, I mean, victims of human rights violations are entitled to remedies, including apologies, monetary compensation, and all manner of things available under the law. So the panel was right, in making those recommendations, because I mean, it is not as if for those who have died that any amount of money can bring them back, but at least it's a way to assuage their pains and money, and to say that the state is sorry for what happened and that it will not happen again. So that the families of those who lost their lives are entitled to some symbolic, compensation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Okechukwu Nwanguma, for being with us on Akweya TV. We really appreciate your effort and what you are doing in the reform of the criminal justice sector in Nigeria. We do believe that this step is a crowning of the efforts you have put in so far, and we pray that a lot of things will work together at the different levels for this to come to fruition, and then we have peaceful resolution of the situation. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, that's Mr. Okechukwu Nwanguma, the Executive Director of the Rule of Law and Accountability Center, based in Lagos, but working across Nigeria. And he has been doing a lot of work in ensuring accountability on the part of the police and other security agencies. So what do you think about the panel of inquiry report? Please go on YouTube and go on all our social media platforms and join this conversation, because it is a major, major victory for those who are acting for equality and social justice in Nigeria. But we really don't know what you think. Will it be implemented or not? Give us feedback via your comments or send us a WhatsApp on 09044800200, or you go on Snapchat. Everywhere we are at Akweya TV. On YouTube, feel free to share this content and also subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much. I am Odo Diego Kenyodo, once again saying, keep sharing.